Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of RedShark Live. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be looking at the new Ronin handheld gimbal and a great new camera which we think, it's from Sony, we think it might be the spiritual successor to the EX3. Fascinating comparison to make. But anyway, I just want to say, as usual, thanks for joining us. Thank you to Matrox, who are our sponsors, and they're a fantastic company, great products, one of which we're using in order for you to be able to see this stream. It's the Matrox Monarch HDX, and what it is, it's a streaming appliance which is essentially a very reliable box that you feed video into, and it sends a stream wherever you want it to. And not only that, it can do it to 2 separate locations, or you can make a recording at the same time as you're sending a stream. Great little device, ultra reliable for those times when you don't want to have to rely on using a computer for streaming. So I'm going to ask Simon, my colleague on RedShark. He's RedShark's deputy editor, and he's been receiving all these wonderful products that we're going to talk about. So Simon, if you'd like to come over, and I'll hand your microphone over to you. These gimbals are absolutely amazing. You'll see what a great piece of engineering this is. Sorry about the microphone noise. There we go. It doesn't get any slicker than that, does it? So
find a way to get myself in. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, there we go. This is live. This is science in practice. Okay, so before we get onto that, I just wanted to mention something interesting, Simon, that's cropped up, because we had a little discussion on RedShark in the comment section. We had a piece about Zeiss lenses, and there's a new set of Zeiss primes which are, let's say, they have character. You know, Zeiss are noted for their, if you like, scientific, almost clinical look,
Yeah.
in a good way. I mean, you know, these are not using these terms pejoratively. They are very, very good, objectively very good lenses. But they take an interesting step towards making lenses with more character, and arguably making it more viable to make an emotional connection between the scene that is being captured by the lens and the camera, and the viewer's own emotional response.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big thing now, is the whole emotional connection side of things. We've seen it with the Sony Venice with the colour sides.
Yeah.
But lenses have long been known to be chosen for their particular characteristics. And you know, we were chatting earlier, weren't we, about we've got an upcoming article by Adam Hammer, who has written about the Russian-made Helios lens,
which is a vintage
lens. Yeah. And you know, it's got a bit of a cult following because of its characteristics, and apparently each one has slightly different characteristics.
So each individual, there are no two Helios is the same.
Apparently.
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it. I mean, DPs choose lenses based upon the characteristics of the lens, and it's part of that emotional connection that the audience is going to be making with that production in the end.
And isn't it? I think the issue is that a few people read this article and they said, well, how can a lens have emotional intelligence? Well, this is a bit of a wind-up, and this is a writing technique. It's called creative writing, and you have a headline and you say, you know, these Zeiss lenses are emotionally intelligent or whatever, and of course they're not emotionally intelligent. They're inanimate objects, but the point is that they're an intelligent choice to make if you want to do what all directors and DPs ultimately want to do, which is to get an emotional response. I mean, if you're trying to sell a product, you want to get an emotional response. You don't, if you're trying to sell somebody a camera or a dishwasher or a mobile phone, you don't want to say, look, all right, here's the list of specifications, and they go, oh, I must get one of those. Some people would. But actually what you really want, that's really going to make people buy something, is an emotional response that says, I can't live without that. I've fallen in love with that product. And this is the sense in which we talk about it. And a few people commented and they said, well, this is nonsense. How can a lens be emotional? And well, it would have helped if they'd read the article, I think. But the second thing is that loads of people did read the article and they came back and said, we get what you're saying exactly. Yeah. And don't you think, Simon, it's the case that these days cameras are getting so good that it's almost becoming that you can't distinguish between them unless you use some other criterion like the emotional impact, and isn't that exactly what Sony's doing with the Venice?
Exactly. I mean when you used to set up, well, people still do set up cameras to charts, but if you take say the DSC color chart and you set a camera up to that and you align all the color in the right places on the vector scope, DSC labs themselves say, well, you can set the camera up perfectly to that, but that's not going to give you an emotionally resonant picture.
No.
You know, you'll get an accurate picture, but that's not going to be one that is emotionally resonant with your audience. You're going to have to add something else to it. You're going to have to tweak that color in some way.
In a sense, by calibrating a camera like that, it's as if you're saying, you calibrate it right, you are going to have fewer impediments to conveying that emotional image, or you're going to have the widest pipeline. I don't mean in terms of data rate, I mean in terms of the image itself.
And it's also the way that the lens renders the detail and sharpness as well. It's not just about color. It's about how it renders a detail. You know, if a camera's you've got a 4K camera rendering every single pock mark on a person's skin. I mean, DPs will use all manner of diffusion and methods to try and make an actor's face look more flattering. It comes down to those things as well, and that's sort of affecting it before it's getting to the camera's imaging pipeline. You're controlling what is effectively going into the camera.
And to me, the combination of the camera, the sensor, and the lens, they all work as, they are one system. But they are part of the artist's medium in the same way that the paint and the brush are part of the artist's medium.
And when cameras are so good these days, it used to be we'd work around a camera's limitations. You'd have to find a way, and that's less so now. But that means you've got a very broad brush, so to speak, and you have to kind of find ways to sort of use your artistry, I guess, to control that picture. It's and like you say, to distinguish things apart. You can't just all have the same.
No. Well, the other thing, just briefly, that this I think was really fascinating that brought up. Somebody else left a comment and they said, well, these Zeiss lenses, they're no better than these other lenses that cost 1/10 of the price. Well, apart from that being wrong, objectively wrong, as you could test, they are significantly better than those cheaper lenses. The guy was saying, why can't they just make them cheaper? They must make a huge profit margin. Why everything else is getting cheap? But the lenses and optics are not the same as silicon chips. Silicon chips, you can go on, ultimately they're made out of sand, that's a cheap material, and you can cram more and more and more, and they will get more powerful faster. This is because of Moore's law, which arguably is tailing off now, but that effect has never applied to optics, which have always been hard to make, required absolute precision, very expensive materials, massively researched and highly proprietary coatings on the lenses. It's difficult stuff. So to make something significantly better than something else may well cost 10 times more.
Lenses suffer from one primary problem. They're subject to this thing called the laws of physics. And you can't there's no real way to get around it. You know, if you want a certain, even a small percentage increase, you know, if you get your lens to 95% of perfect, to get that extra 5% is going to require an order of magnitude more expensive manufacturing processes and
It's the same with cars, isn't it? You know, you can make a car do 200 miles an hour. That's quite difficult in itself. To make it do 210, it might cost twice as much. Anyway, let's move on to this Ronin. It's the Ronin S.
The Ronin S.
What is it? It's a single hand.
Yeah,
gimbal.
Single hand operated gimbal. I'll try not to hold it in front of my face. I'll just move this up a bit, actually. Okay, so yeah, it's a single hand operated gimbal designed for mirrorless and DSLR style cameras. It's got, for compatible cameras, and with the interface you have a full focus control here, which I believe interfaces with the DJI focus system. You have a control joystick on the back, which is thumb operated, so you can control your pad.
And you use the camera's viewfinder, do you, to see? Can you see?
You can do. I've seen people rig up monitors on a clamp to the handle.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the maximum weight? What's the maximum weight you could have on the suspended?
I'm
bit?
Not actually sure, but I mean,
there's obviously a limit.
You're talking. I mean, I think I've seen on the DJI side a red on it for some reason, but it's primarily designed.
So limit to what you can hold in your hand, like
I mean, it's primarily designed for DSLRs, and it is quite weighty.
What would you say? Is that about 2 kilograms altogether?
I think it's probably
a bit more,
maybe a bit more.
Yeah,
maybe 2, maybe 3. But yeah, obviously, you know,
can you just move it around a bit.
Single-handed, you can, you know, it's going to be tiring, but you can hold it.
Oh right, yeah.
On the bottom there with the two hands, and you know, you could it's got screw mounts on the bottom here. I'm sure you could find.
So is this a 3-axis one? Is that what they call a 3-axis?
It's a 3-axis gimbal, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got your
roll, yaw, and pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you had a 4-axis gimbal, that would dampen the up and down.
Oh right.
So if you were running.
Yeah,
you could get rid of that bobbing motion, which you get. You know, if you have a Steadicam, it's although you still have that bobbing motion, you can, with experience, you can compensate for it. But gimbals are more susceptible to it because they don't, as a general point, have that.
But what it does do is keep the camera itself level, if not in the same vertical plane.
Yeah.
And what's the battery life like on this?
I think it's rated to about 12 hours. I think.
That will depend what you're doing with it as well, I suppose.
It would, I guess, continuous use, and if you have a heavier camera on it, I guess that would have some kind of effect on it. But you know, what I've been seeing so far is that it is lasting pretty well.
I saw it calibrating itself, and it was actually very impressive. It's almost like watching somebody doing ballet exercises.
Yeah, you can. There's an app that works via Bluetooth. And it connects very, very quickly. You know, I'm used to having gadgets come with a connectivity to an app, and you try and connect to it, and you get all sorts of error messages, and you have to turn off and reset.
Yeah.
This thing just connected first
Beautiful.
time, and you know, from there you can control time lapses and all kinds of other keyframeable movements.
Well, I have yet to find anybody who disagrees with my theory that DJI is going to be the first company to produce a domestic robot that will do the ironing.
They're really doing a lot of interesting stuff, and I can fully see them diverging in the future.
So, well, look, if you'd like to put that down and grab the Sony camera, this camera has a typical Sony name, which means that I can never remember it. It's Z80.
The PXW Z80.
Zilog Z80 microprocessor.
Yeah.
What is it in full, the name?
PXW Z80. We could call it the Z80 for
Z280, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Z280.
Z280, sorry, yeah.
Okay, so it's hard for you to get the scale of this looking on the shot here, but it's a very, very solid camera.
It's beautifully made. This is going to make a lot of people very happy, I think. 3 half-inch CMOSs, So it's a three chip camera.
Now that sounds like a flashback to the past, but an arrangement like that has enormous advantages, doesn't it? There's no debayer.
No debayering. I mean, obviously, with the kind of prism arrangement you need is half-inch chips, which I know, in this day and age, they kind of look down upon. But this is a huge advantage for this. You'd never be able to have a 3-chip camera with a larger sensor in that size of body. And this is already, as you can attest, it's quite a weighty camera. You've got the prism arrangement in there, and the optics, the lens, which is it's manually controlled with end stops.
Yes.
But just like the EX cameras, it's actually a servo in there.
Yeah.
But you'd never know it.
It's like power steering.
Yeah, you'd never know it to use it unless you're really going very quickly on things. But it is like I realise that Sony had another camera in between the EX series that succeeded them, but this is like a 4K EX1 effectively.
And how long ago was that, the EX1? 12 years? 2006
I think it came out, 2007.
And that was HD.
HD, yeah, and it's still a current camera. You could still use it and get great results now.
Yeah, and marginally before that, the only HD cameras were HD cam cameras, and
you had the half-inch XD cam shoulder mount.
But also, I'm thinking the bigger cameras. I can't remember what they're called, but they were like 70,000 pounds.
Yeah, the F900s and F950s.
Yeah. So what you can do with this camera? What is it? It's about 8,000 pounds.
It's about £7,500, I think.
Yeah. So it's not a trivial purchase. But if your job is as a camera operator, I always make the comparison between the cost of a car. If you do any kind of freelance job, you've got to have a car. You're going to spend at least that much on a car, probably double, if not 3 times that. So to spend that on your main tool is, I'm not saying it's a trivial purchase, but it's something that I'd say this is priced about right for that.
This is something you can work very quickly with. It turns on, it's ready to go. There's no messing around with lenses. It's recording to the S/S media. Will it come out?
Is it only S/S? Is there no SD?
Does it have an SD? I'm not sure if we've got an SD for proxies.
Can't see one.
I don't think it does. S/S cards, pretty common.
Yeah.
4-channel, you can cope with 4-channel audio.
Has it got 4 XLRs?
You got twin XLRs, and I think the other 2 channels are used for the wireless.
Oh, I see.
Mics, plug in on that hot shoe mount.
And
don't hold me to that.
So the other thing that struck me is that it's got a variable ND, electronically variable ND.
It's got the variable ND, just like the.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's the same as on the FS5.
Yeah. It's the same kind of thing.
So, I mean, in your own words, when would you buy? What sort of person would buy this, as opposed to the sort of person that would buy an FS5 or FS5 Mark II?
This is for somebody who is, they might be shooting a documentary. They need to work quickly. A camera like the FS5 is great, but when you're having to deal with interchangeable lenses all the time, the lenses that fit onto a large chip camera, they don't have the focal length range that you can get on a camera like this. So, this is going from, 5.6 mil to 95.2 mil. And, you can just work so much more quickly with a camera like this.
You can literally grab this, throw it in the car, run with it.
With the XD, I think is it XD Cam Live or Sony Live? With the subscription, you can do live streaming straight from the camera. Via a cellular network.
You see, what I find fascinating is that Sony makes a lot of products, and I know people always complain for every manufacturer. They say, "Oh, why don't they do it like this? Why don't they do it like that?" It's not going to suit. It's not going to suit everyone, is it? But I think the point is that there are, as camera technology improves, there are always new discernible personas or new discernible types of users. And so whereas 10 years ago the same kind of person that was going to use an FS5 might have bought an EX3 because there are only now, as the capabilities multiply, it's resolved itself into a kind of user that wants a bigger sensor, more cinematic sort of look, and versatility in that sense.
It is, yeah. And then this caters for that market. And this is going to really, as I said, make a lot of people very happy. But this whole idea of a cinematic look. I mean, I used to shoot with an EX a lot, an EX3, and achieving a shallow depth of field isn't that hard. It's just the amount of shallow depth of field. You're just not going to, just because you can't throw everything so out of focus that you can't tell what it is. You can still get a cinematic look if you know what you're doing. You can still put things.
It's rather.
You control the image.
It's rather monodimensional to define a cinematic look as a function of the depth of field, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's just.
Especially when movies in the 50s and 60s strove for a very deep depth of field, cinematic.
It's true.
Composition and the way the story is being told. 28 Days Later was shot on DV cameras, and it was still had a cinematic sense. So, I think we need to put that to bed. Really, this idea that big chip.
Well, it's always a lovely debate, isn't it? But it kind of goes around in circles. Okay, so questions are flooding in. The first one is, how does the DJI Ronin S compare to other products like the tilter?
I can't comment on the tilter. I've never used it.
I think you're going to. There's this kind of thing where you have to go into it very, very, very deeply, because superficially there are a lot of similar products, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult. I mean, there's so many well-built products out there as well. This one has a lot of functionality via the app. You've got a lot of control over the Ronin S, so you can keyframe points. You can do you can control your time lapses from it. And from what I've been trying so far, it's reliable. That's the thing. You've got a reliability there that maybe with I can't comment on the tilter specifically, but maybe with a more inexpensive make, you might not have that same robustness or reliability. I can't say for sure, but that's one thing that you might gain.
Okay, all right. Moving on to the Z280, is there a time code function on it? I think there is.
Yeah, it's got full
Genlock.
Got Genlock
and SDI.
SDI, and there we are.
Yeah, well, one of the other
other
questions is, does it have an SDI output? It definitely does.
Oh yeah,
there it is.
I mean, something else we should point out is that this camera records to AVC Intra at 600 megabits per second in 422 10-bit color in 4K. That's an impressive specification.
That's awesome. That is like so fully broadcast, isn't it? And okay, so just to go through this, on the side that we're looking at it here, on my side of the camera, there's SDI out, there's timecode in and out, and there's Genlock as well. So that will allow you to use multiples of these in a multi-camera shoot and have coherent timecode. So would you say this is more of a television broadcast camera as opposed to cinema?
Well, it's news gathering, and it's designed to be included in those types of environment. I mean, the fact that it's got the cellular live broadcast functionality, it gives away its very ENG orientated sort of positioning.
Yeah. Oh well, these questions are coming in like a hailstorm now. Is the f-stop constant throughout the zoom range?
No, I'm not sure about that.
I don't think it is. But
we haven't had this very long, so I haven't been.
No, we haven't actually done our review of this yet. But
I think it actually might well be. We could. I can try it. Yeah. Let's do a live test and see what this thing. See what it does.
Good, that's a really good question. So while Simon's doing that, what is your favourite feature of the Z280? Well, I've got several favourite features, so I don't know if that counts. But my two favourite features are.
Yep, that's constant.
Oh, it is constant.
F1.9 throughout the range.
F1.9, which is fast.
Yeah.
That is a fast lens. Okay, so my favourite feature isn't really a feature. It's that it's so ergonomic. I mean, I'm a writer, an editor. I don't go out with cameras very often, but when I have done, I prefer things to be where I expect them to be. And I just picked this up and I thought, oh, that's good. I like that. And I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And even down to the placement of the XLR inputs.
I love the way that it's built. I love the lens. A lot of people use the manuals or the servo zoom on lenses. I hate using the servo zoom on lenses. I always use a manual thing. So the fact that I can control this lens, with all these the three control rings quite easily if I'm hand holding it. Everything's positioned nicely. It feels high quality. I mean, it feels robust. Look at this. It's built like a tank.
This is lovely. Just where you want it. Start, stop, and zoom. Just there, and it's just. If you compare it with some of the other Sony cameras, like was it the F5, the one that was like a box that had all the controls sprayed on it, like sprayed on like a texture. This is the opposite of that. It's everything is in its place. Sorry to hog this discussion, but my other favourite feature is obviously the electronic ND, continuously variable.
Yeah,
ND.
that's so useful. That is incredibly useful. I mean that's just something that I wish was on every single camera ever made. But
ultimately, you have to decide whether you're going to be somebody who typically makes cinema scripted type productions, or whether you just want something that's going to get the shot.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth adding that you can still make cinema with a camera like this.
Yeah, exactly. But the beauty of a camera like this is you don't need to be adding cages. It's not a box. You've got to add a cage and an extra monitor too. And okay, you can't change the lens, but it's got all that range. It's very fast. It's fully manual. There's more control over this lens than you will ever have with sticking a DSLR lens on the front of a so-called cinema camera. To get that kind of control over a lens on a Super 35 chip camera, you're going to be needing to spend however many thousands of pounds per lens, and you're not going to get the same focal range at this.
No, that's right. All right. Well, we're getting some nice feedback as well that people are watching this in the States and all over the place, and they say it's a great image, which is thanks Matrox for your encoder and for our £36 LED builder's lights as well. I think that's about it. Simon, if you want to get back to the desk, I'll grab your microphone. And thanks everybody for watching. It's been great fun. We love looking at these new cameras. Thanks for your question. There's another question just coming in. Is there a delay on SD out on an external monitor? Well, there always will be.
We'll test it.
Yeah, we'll test it. I mean, there's going to be a frame or two always, because you have to process these things. Every time it comes in, there's going to maybe be at least a frame delay. But I think on some cameras this is worse than others. A frame or two is going to be completely acceptable, I would say. We haven't tested that, but we certainly will. So I think you're going to be reviewing that any day now, aren't you? So even though it's the summer, we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming in. So we're really quite busy, which is kind of surprising, isn't it? So anyway, thanks very much for watching. You'll be able to see this as an on-demand download within half an hour or so. And we will be back in approximately 2 weeks. Thanks ever so much for watching. Bye.